Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. As the wait for a breakthrough in the Iran war continues, U.S. President Donald Trump has reportedly sent back changes to the proposed deal with Iran, demanding tougher conditions to end the conflict. Meanwhile, fighting continues between Israel and Hezbollah, as Israel says it has captured a strategic castle in southern Lebanon, calling it a major turning point in its campaign against Hezbollah. Early voting for Korea's June 3rd local elections ended over the weekend, with a record turnout of more than 23%. Over 10 million voters cast their ballots during the two-day early voting period, from Friday through Saturday. Officials from 50 African nations have gathered in Seoul as the Korea-Africa ministerial meeting got underway this morning. The meeting aims to turn commitments made at the Korea-Africa Summit in 2024 into concrete projects. U.S. President Donald Trump has made changes to the terms of a potential framework for a deal to end the war in Iran, with edits reportedly seeking stricter language regarding Iran's nuclear restrictions and the guaranteed reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Our Park Jun-ah starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump sent back changes to a proposed deal from Iran after a meeting with advisors on Friday. While the exact details of the edits remain unclear, an official familiar with the issue told CNN that Trump is pushing for much stricter language regarding Iran's nuclear restrictions and the guaranteed reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Reports suggest that Trump is also highly cautious about relaxing sanctions on Tehran, including access to frozen Iranian funds, as he aims to avoid repeating what he views as flaws in past administrations' nuclear deals. Tehran responded with deep skepticism, reiterating that it will not accept a one-sided agreement. Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf made it clear that no deal will receive approval unless Iran's sovereign rights are fully protected. Ghalibaf said that Iranian negotiators place no trust in the words and promises of the enemy, adding that tangible results would lead Iran to fulfill its commitments. Ongoing geopolitical tensions continue to weigh heavily on consumers and global energy markets. Regular gasoline prices averaged $4.34 per gallon in the U.S. over the weekend, almost 46% higher than before the war. Addressing the economic impact at home, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent downplayed concerns about recent price increases, describing the energy-driven inflation as a temporary supply shock that would ease as global markets stabilize. Park Jun-ah, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Israel says it has captured a strategic castle in southern Lebanon, marking Israel's deepest incursion into the country in 26 years. This comes as Israeli forces have expanded evacuation orders across the region. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Israel says it has captured the strategic Beaufort Castle in southern Lebanon, which Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described as a decisive shift in the country's offensive against Hezbollah. Located just 14.5 kilometers from the Israeli border, the fortress overlooks the Litani Valley, beyond an area in southern Lebanon from where Israel had stated its original objective was to remove Hezbollah fighters. It is seen as both a symbolic and strategic prize. In a statement following the operation, Netanyahu said Israel had broken the barrier of fear and was now taking the initiative across multiple fronts, including Lebanon, Gaza, and Syria. He said the goal is to deepen and expand Israel's control over areas previously held by Hezbollah. Defense Minister Israel Katz highlighted the symbolic significance of the capture, noting that the Golani Brigade, which first seized the castle during the Lebanon War 4 decades ago, had once again raised the Israeli flag over the site. Israeli officials say controlling Beaufort Castle and the surrounding ridge strengthens protection for communities along Israel's northern border. The development comes as Israeli ground forces continue advancing deeper into Lebanese territory beyond the Litani River, while the military has expanded evacuation orders across southern Lebanon. The Israel Defense Forces have again warned residents to leave all areas south of the Zorani River, marking the second such broad evacuation order in recent days. Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam condemned the operation, accusing Israel of carrying out what he called collective punishment. The castle was built by crusaders roughly 900 years ago and was held by Israel from 1982 until 2000. 이승재, Arirang News.
And now for more on the latest situation in the Middle East, we're joined today by Dr. Hassan Khan, visiting professor at the Institute of Middle East Studies at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Professor Khan, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
So, Trump has reportedly sent changes to the proposed deal made by Iran. While Iran says Trump is stalling talks with excessive demands, what does this suggest about the prospects for peace talks?
The fact that Trump is sending back or didn't sign for that ceasefire agreement and he's sending for changes does not mean that negotiations are failing or collapsing, but it means it's entering a more difficult phase. The key issue here is no longer whether both sides want this ceasefire deal or the issue is whether they would agree on the concessions, the sequencing of the concessions. So politically, this means that the United States is using delay as a leverage, and Trump wants to show that he's in no hurry to accept a weak and fragile deal, while Tehran also wants to frame this delay as the United States' fault, the United States' bad faith and excessive demands. So I think the negotiation is still alive, but it's still fragile, and the most likely outcome coming out of this, there will be another postpone and another phase of talk. So opening a new space for talk again, not reaching a whole agreement, ending every thing, which is like sanctions and missiles and regional proxies. No, I don't think so. I think it's just opening for next phase of talk.
I see. And U.S. officials have earlier said that a potential deal would include Iran's commitment to give up its stockpile of highly enriched uranium. Would giving up that uranium cross a red line for Tehran?
Yes, actually, this would be particularly similar like crossing a red line for Iran. Because for Iran, giving up the uranium stockpile entirely, especially under United States pressure, would look like a surrender after war. And this touches a very sensitive issue inside Iran, like sovereignty and regime prestige, strategic deterrence. So Iran supreme leader has actually direct orders that the uranium should not leave the country. So, but there is a possible diplomatic compromise here. Iran may reach a technical deal like dilution of this enriched uranium or international monitoring. Of course, this will be in exchange for a sanction relief or security guarantees. So the red line here is not the enriched uranium itself. It's the humiliation, and Iran would not accept any deal that looks like a surrender in front of their own people.
And while that's happening, the U.S. Defense Chief, Pete Hegseth, says the United States is more than capable of resuming war with Iran. So how real do you think is the risk of renewed escalation?
This is a typical response of United States Secretary Hegseth, because when he says he's more than capable of resuming attacks, he's using pressure, leverage on Iran. He's showing that the United States is willing to resume attacking or striking Iran. The danger here is miscalculation. Like both sides are negotiating from under live fire pressure now. So it's a very actually unique situation, because usually when we have diplomacy, we don't have a military. But in this situation right now, Iran and the United States are moving together with a live fire threat with diplomacy. So if Iran believes the United States is bluffing, it may delay its decision. If the United States believes Iran is buying time, it may strike again. So United States here wants a deal. It can present as a strategic victory to the world. Iran also wants the deal that will end all its hardship, like sanction and preservation of regime dignity, and therefore renewed escalation might be possible, especially through these limited strikes like now.
All right, and Israel says it seized a strategic castle in Lebanon during the deepest incursion into the country in over a quarter of a century. Right, where's the conflict between Lebanon and Hezbollah heading?
This is the real thing here. The Lebanon front is moving in a very dangerous direction. Israel is no longer like acting on self-defense on the border. It's trying to control territories and trying to gain more territories on the southern Lebanon. Netanyahu ordered troops to move on to farther deeper in Lebanon, and they seized the strategic fort, Tatabeh Fort Castle, and they moved from Litani to Zaharani River. It's really like a big deal, and more than 1.2 million people are like displaced since the beginning of this year, and people are reporting also that the Israeli army military is like demolishing whole cities with intention. So this conflict is heading towards like a very prolonged war of attrition between Israel and Hezbollah. And we see that Israel now wants to degrade Hezbollah. If Hezbollah cannot surrender because his foundation is based on resistance in the southern Lebanon. So if he leaves this resistance, he doesn't have any rule anymore. And the weakest party here is the Lebanese state. They don't know what to do with Hezbollah, and they don't have the power to resist the military attack of Israel. So Lebanon front here is becoming like a pressure valve of the war between U.S., Iran, and Israel.
I see. All right, Professor Gan, thank you so much for your time and insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Korea saw a record turnout of 23.51% during 2 days of early voting for local elections. According to the National Election Commission, more than 10.4 million voters cast ballots during the early voting period from Friday morning to Saturday evening. Turnout reached 11.6% on the first day and 11.91% on the second day. The figure surpasses the previous local election early voting record of 20.62% set in 2022. Voters will head to the polls again on Wednesday. This week, President Lee Jae Myung celebrates the first anniversary of his inauguration. Our Blue House correspondent Yoon Jang-min takes a look back at the past year with a focus on his diplomatic and economic policies.
On June 4, 2025, Lee Jae Myung was sworn in as the country's 21st president, vowing to end polarization triggered by martial law.
희망의 새 나라를 위한 우리 국민의 준엄한 명령을 반드시 받들겠습니다.
6 months later, he relocated the nation's top office back to the Blue House, or 청와대, the traditional presidential compound, officially ending the Yongsan era, during which martial law was declared in 2024. On the diplomatic front, President Lee reached a trade deal with his U.S. counterpart, Donald Trump, after 2 summits, promising large-scale investments in the U.S. for lower tariffs. Also agreed with cooperation on South Korea building a nuclear power submarine.
한미 동맹은 안보와 경제, 첨단 기술을 포괄하는 진정한 미래형 전략적 포괄 동맹으로 발전 심화하게 되었습니다.
President Lee has brought a kind of maturity and sort of balance to South Korean foreign policies. That's probably the best one, is sort of keeping things on the rails, given that the U.S. has turned out to be a pretty difficult partner under this president.
On top of that, the South Korean leader placed pragmatic diplomacy at the forefront, having restored Seoul-Beijing ties and resumed the so-called Seoul-Tokyo shuttle diplomacy. Another focus was expanding diplomatic horizons to the global south amid global uncertainties. On the economy, South Korean stocks have seen an unprecedented rally, driven by a global AI boom and efforts to improve shareholder returns, with the benchmark Kospi exceeding far beyond the 5,000 threshold, one of its campaign pledges. In 2025, Korea secured 260,000 GPUs from NVIDIA and launched the Presidential Council on National AI Strategy.
저는 우리가 하기에 따라서 이 코리아 디스카운트가 아니고 얼마든지 정상 평가를 넘어서서 코리아 프리미엄도 가능하다.
Reviving the people's livelihoods was also a key pillar, with the administration organizing extra budgets to breathe life into the economy in the form of consumption vouchers, as well as minimizing the fallout from the Middle East conflict as the country navigates high interest rates, high inflation, and a weaker currency. When it comes to stabilizing housing prices in the capital, Seoul, the president has reinstated the heavy capital gains tax on multiple home owners and sent out a series of strong messages to curb housing speculation. 1 year ago, President Lee took an oath of office, placing pragmatism front and center. For his second year in office, he puts greater emphasis on yielding tangible outcomes. He will unveil key policy visions next week for the year ahead. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
The Korea-Africa ministerial meeting kicked off in Seoul this morning with 50 African nations and the heads of 4 regional organizations participating. Foreign Minister Cho Hyun earlier expressed hope that the meeting would deepen trust and demonstrate Korea's sincerity toward Africa. The meeting aims to turn commitments made at the Korea-Africa Summit in 2024 into concrete projects. With Africa holding about 30% of the world's critical minerals and offering alternative oil supplies, the meeting highlights growing strategic cooperation between Korea and Africa. A Korea-Africa Business Forum will follow on Tuesday. South Korea could soon deploy AI to monitor much of its frontline defenses along the border. The Defense Ministry says the move is being considered as part of a broader response to the country's shrinking population. Our Kim Seong reports.
More than 22,000 troops are currently assigned to guard duties at roughly 200 general outposts along the heavily fortified border with North Korea. That number is expected to be cut to around 6,000. Defense Minister An Kyu-baek said the military will make the reduction by building what he called an AI-based scientific surveillance system. The plan reflects the impact of South Korea's shrinking military manpower, but it is also aimed at shifting troops away from the manpower-intensive border duty model and using them more effectively elsewhere. Defense Minister An said around 16,000 troops would be moved to rear areas and deployed back to the GOPs in the event of a contingency. The key question will be whether the technology can operate reliably in frontline conditions. Concerns remain over false alarms, hacking risk, and initial response capability in border areas, where a rapid reaction would be critical in the event of an emergency.
Even Israel's AI border surveillance system was breached by Hamas, resulting in heavy casualties. Technology can fail, so there must be supplementary measures in place, including a rapid response team.
The ministry also said the authorities are discussing plans to expand civilian roles in rear area security and transfer coastal defense duties to the Korea Coast Guard. It is also pursuing a broader restructuring plan in response to the expected drop in troop levels from 450,000 to around 350,000 by 2040. At the same time, the ministry is also considering bringing in more outsourced personnel, including private military contractors, to maintain an overall force of 500,000. The government is reviewing a plan to integrate the Army, Navy, and Air Force academies into a single military academy. Under the proposal, cadets would receive common training in their first 2 years, followed by branch-specific education in the 3rd and 4th years. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Choo Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. An explosion at a village in Myanmar's Shan state has killed at least 55 people and wounded dozens more. According to local media reports, the blast occurred at noon local time on Sunday in Kaung Tat village near the Chinese border. The Tang National Liberation Army rebel group that controlled the area said mining explosives stored in the village detonated accidentally. Footage from the scene showed a large crater surrounded by shattered buildings. Children were among the dead and hundreds of homes were damaged. An investigation is underway. Colombia is heading to presidential runoff after no candidate secured more than 50% of the vote on Sunday, with right-wing outsider Abelardo de la Espriella leading leftist Senator Ivan Cepeda by 43% to 41%. De la Espriella, a lawyer known as El Tigre, or the Tiger, who has never had elected office, has modeled himself on El Salvador's Nayib Bukele and is promising a military crackdown on armed groups. Cepeda has pledged to continue outgoing President Petro's peace negotiation strategy with rebel groups. The runoff is seen as a test of the direction Latin America will take between progressive policies and the region's growing shift toward hardline security candidates. 5 patients have recovered from Ebola virus in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the first documented recoveries by people with confirmed cases since the current outbreak began. The head of the World Health Organization said on Sunday that 4 patients were discharged that day and 1 the day before, adding that anyone who contracts Ebola can recover with early treatment even without an approved vaccine or medicine. A new treatment center opened in Congo's Ituri province on Sunday. The WHO said 134 confirmed cases have been recorded across Congo and Uganda, with 18 confirmed deaths as of May 29th. Doctors Without Borders warned the virus is still spreading faster than the response. Paris Saint-Germain won the Champions League for the 2nd consecutive year on Saturday, beating Arsenal on penalties in Budapest. But celebrations back in France turned violent overnight, leaving more than 200 people injured and 1 dead. French authorities said 57 police officers were injured in Paris and over 400 people were taken into custody. Rioters torched cars and rental bikes and destroyed storefronts across the French capital. Interior Minister Laurent Nunez said more than 20,000 officers had been deployed and the situation was under control. Far-right leader Marine Le Pen said, quote, "Only in France does a football victory trigger riots." President Macron called the violence unacceptable.
The first day of June is bringing a real taste of summer. Temperatures are climbing well above average across much of the country today, and the heat is not stopping there. Tomorrow will be even hotter with an expected high of 33 degrees Celsius, and the warmer weather will continue through local elections on Wednesday. While most regions stay mostly dry today, weather conditions are beginning to change in the southern regions. Rain beginning on Jeju Island this morning will spread to the southern coast later tonight. Mountainous regions on Jeju Island could see more than 150 millimeters of downpours. Most of the southern coast might get up to 80 millimeters through tomorrow. And this afternoon, Seoul and Gwangju will be getting up to 30 degrees Celsius. Daegu, Gyeongju will be hotter at 32 degrees. The summer heat will continue through midweek, where temperatures are still expected to stay near or above 30 degrees in many regions, with a chance of rain or passing showers.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.